Welcome everyone to the first public meeting of the Southwest Community Brownfield Opportunity Area Project. I'm Becky Timmons. I'm an urban planner with Fisher Associates here in Rochester. I'm the project manager of a multidisciplinary team that was chosen by the city to lead this project. I'm going to introduce some other members of our team and our project advisory committee in just a minute. Before we get started, I do want to note there's a lot going on in this part of Rochester right now. I know many of you have participated in meetings already for other projects and initiatives, including the Bull's Head Street project. This is the kickoff for a separate project in two other areas of the neighborhood. So tonight is not about updates to that project. We're going to be focused on a whole new part of the BOA. I'll include a slide with a QR code if you do want an update on that street project. We've got information about that. There's also QR codes on the table where you checked in. The other piece of housekeeping I do want to just mention is that if you picked up the agenda when you checked in, you'll see that we are scheduled to get out of here at 7:45 as long as we stay on schedule. So you'll be home to watch the Bills game. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Sorry, I got a lot of windows open, so I need to manage them over here. Okay, so our agenda for tonight, I'm going to do project team introductions. We're going to talk about what is a BOA, go over the goals and objectives of the project timeline, the study area boundary, some key findings, focus areas that we've identified, and then we'll do a little bit of an interactive workshop, and then we'll talk about next steps. So our project team, like I said, it's a multidisciplinary team. The project is, sorry, I skipped right over this. The project is funded by the New York State Department of State with funds provided under the Brownfield Opportunity Areas program. So the Department of State oversees the project. Our representative wasn't able to be here with us tonight. It's also being overseen by the city of Rochester, and we've got Rick Ridsky, the manager of special projects, here with us. Like I said, I'm Becky Timmons with Fisher Associates. I also have Don Netzger with me and Frank Armento in the back of the room and Maggie Skuse. We also have 3 sub-consultant firms that are working with us. Robbie Engineering is going to be working on some infrastructure and utility analysis. Kevin Dwarka is working on a market and fiscal analysis. And Steel Landscape Architecture is going to be participating in doing some conceptual designs. So our project advisory committee, I see we've got more than a couple of you all here tonight. John DeMott, thank you for being here. Deborah Hughes was not able to be here, neither was Brent, but I thought Don Noto was here. Charles Reeves was not able to be here, but I see Joe, where'd you go? Joe's here as well, so thank you all for being here. All right, so what is a BOA? The BOA program is a state program that provides funding to municipalities to complete area-wide plans to support community revitalization in neighborhoods that have been affected by the presence of brownfields and underutilized sites. So brownfields are neighborhoods or areas within a community negatively affected by real or perceived environmental conditions. These properties are often underutilized because of contamination or the perception of contamination, and that often impedes investment and redevelopment. So through this program, brownfields and underutilized sites are transferred from liabilities to community assets that can generate and support new businesses, jobs, and revenues for local economies, as well as provide new housing and public amenities. Some of the goals and outcomes of the BOA program are to develop or assess the full range of community redevelopment opportunities that are posed by brownfields, build a shared community vision for the reuse of strategic sites. That's why you all are here tonight, is to be part of that building of the community vision. And then to collaborate and coordinate with, screen's blocked. Coordinate and collaborate with local, state, and federal agencies, community groups, and private sector partners to identify and implement solutions to leverage investments for community improvement. This project is actually a continuation of an effort that's been going on since well before 2020, although this says 2020. The Bull's Head Revitalization Plan was developed between 2016 and 2020, culminating in a final plan in January of 2020. Fisher Associates was involved with that project as well. Through 5 PAC meetings and 3 major public meetings, more than 250 people contributed over 300 written comments, feedback gathered through workshops, breakout sessions, and stakeholder outreach. This extensive engagement helped shape the vision or the plan's vision, values, goals, and recommendations. So that BOA was designated in 2020, which opened up opportunities for additional funding, which is where this project comes in. So this is the next step in that. It's Brownfield Opportunity Area Pre-Development Activities. And we have kind of renamed the project the Southwest Community BOA, even though it is part of the it's building on the Bull's Head Revitalization Plan. But in order to distinguish that from some of the other efforts that are going on in the area, we gave it a new name so that you can remember that Southwest Community BOA is this particular project. So that 2020 revitalization plan identified a vision for this entire area that you see here. And I'm going to just read that vision out loud. And remember that this is what we're projecting the area to be in the future, not necessarily what it is today. So the Bull's Head area is an attractive and prosperous neighborhood, which includes opportunities for all current and future residents of all ages and income levels. Once contaminated, vacant, and blighted lands are now healthy and sustainable places where our local businesses and residents thrive. We embrace our historic and strategic location as a center of commerce and health and leverage our role as a transportation hub that connects all people and modes safely and comfortably. Our parks and open spaces play an active role in connecting our community to nature and provide recreation options for our youth. Our broad inclusiveness and continuous drive to improve our neighborhood provides a safe, affordable, prosperous, and attractive place for all. So that's the vision that the community came up with in that initial project. So this continuation of the project, the objectives are to address two specific strategic areas for redevelopment that were identified in that initial BOA plan. And I'll show a map of those in a second. One of them is 95 Ames Street, which is at the west end of the BOA, and the other is the Susan B. Anthony neighborhood area at the east side of the BOA. So the objectives are to remediate contaminated properties, enhance existing multimodal transportation system, redevelop vacant and underutilized sites, provide the groundwork for future investment, continue the city's revitalization efforts, enhance access to and circulation throughout the Susan B. Anthony Museum and House campus, and attract new jobs and investment to the neighborhood. The timeline for this project is shown here. There are many components to this project. We've actually been working on it since the summer, where we convened our first project advisory committee meeting. We kicked that off with a public engagement strategy where we looked at how we would engage the community throughout the process and started holding some stakeholder meetings with property owners and others with particular interest in the area. As we moved into the fall, we're now having our first public meeting and doing our continuing our stakeholder engagement. And we're working on 4 different components that are going to inform the planning that happens in the later phase of this project. So the first is the draft market analysis. As I mentioned, we have a self-consultant working on that portion. There's the infrastructure and utility analysis. There's a targeted traffic impact study that's looking at both of those ends of the BOA. And then there's a visitor and tour bus access feasibility study, and that's particular to the new visitor center at the Susan B. Anthony Museum and House to ensure that buses can circulate through the neighborhood and accommodate increased traffic once that visitor center is built. So as we move into the winter, we'll continue stakeholder engagement. We'll finalize those 4 reports. We'll start to think about environmental site assessments for the strategic sites that we've identified, and we'll start to develop a draft conceptual site reuse master plan and streetscape designs and implementation strategies for those sites. In the spring, we'll hold a second public meeting where we'll present some of those ideas so that you have something to react to and give us your feedback on. And then we plan to wrap things up around the fall of 2026 with a third public meeting with final plans presented, and we will do the required New York State environmental quality review as part of this project. So going kind of backwards a little bit. These are some of the studies that we're going to be looking at as we move through this process. I've listed them in reverse order, the most recent to the older ones. I won't read through all of them, but we're looking at all of the relevant plans that have taken place recently. As I mentioned, there are other area planning initiatives going on. This meeting is specific to the Southwest Community BOA focus areas, but if you do want to learn more about the street improvements project going on, there's a QR code here, there's a website. If you miss it, we've also got the QR codes on some sheets up at the check-in table. So let's look at the study area and some of the strategic sites. So this is a page out of the initial 2020 BOA plan that identifies strategic areas and strategic sites that are a combination of factors. They are maybe brownfields, they may be undeveloped, they may be vacant, they may be underutilized, meaning they may have a building or a business on it, but it may not be the highest and best use of that property. So the ones that we're going to be looking more closely at are the one at the west end of the BOA, 95 Ames Street here, and some of the surrounding area. We also identified a strategic site on the Danforth Community Center and Lynchburg Park property. And then we're going to be looking down here at the east end, where the proposed visitor center for the Smithsonian Anthony Museum and House is going to be, and there's some underutilized properties along West Main Street. So looking a little bit closer, this is what we're calling the west side of the Southwest Community BOA, 95 Ames Street, and this is what we're calling the east side, and we're showing the location of the proposed visitor center and the existing museum and house. So I'm just going to summarize some of the key findings that we found, not just in our work on this project, but also in the initial BOA designation project, where you'll also see some boards over there with some background information about zoning and land use and some of the basics. But what we know in terms of socioeconomic and market conditions is that there's ongoing socioeconomic hardships in the area. There's a strong need for affordable, in particular, senior housing. There's a demand for neighborhood scale retail, and public sector support is needed for new development. In terms of land use, we know that residential areas can be isolated by commercial and rail uses. There are conflicts between residential and non-residential uses, and vacant land and disinvestment can dilute neighborhood identity. In terms of vacant and underutilized land, there's a large inventory of vacant residential parcels and underutilized sites, and some parcels require remediation efforts prior to development. In terms of brownfields and environmental, there's a large proportion of land showing environmental concerns. The potential brownfield sites in the BOA have been inventoried. We have a map over there, the second one from the left. The top portion shows the brownfield that's restricting development, which is where this project comes in, because doing phase 1 environmental site assessments is going to be part of this project to get some more information about what exactly these environmental concerns are. In terms of transportation and infrastructure, we know there's high volume intersections with safety issues. Some sidewalks and crosswalk conditions can feel unsafe. There's a lack of bicycle connectivity and transit amenities. In terms of parks, historic resources, Lynchburg Park is the only park within the BOA. There are portions of multiple historic districts that overlap the area, and there's no significant natural features present, no major water features or woods or anything like that. We've begun working on the market analysis. We have a couple of key takeaways from our subconsultant. We know that Rochester's economy is continuing to recover from the pandemic in terms of population and job loss, but not all sectors are recovering evenly. Housing is especially in undersupply, especially housing units that are priced affordably, and as I mentioned, senior housing. In tracking national trends, commercial office space market hasn't recovered since COVID, but the demand for retail and industrial spaces remains stable. So let's look a little bit more closely at the sites that we've identified, or these focus areas that we're going to be looking at tonight. The first is the west side. So as you can see, the site 95 Ames Street is about a little over 14 acres. It's the area's largest revitalization opportunity. So what we want to think about tonight is what types of development might be appropriate here. It's the former site of Taylor Instruments. We know that it's contaminated and is going to require significant environmental cleanup. And its proximity to the park and the residential neighborhoods to the south and to the east offer an opportunity to enhance this western gateway into the neighborhood. So we want to look at how can that gateway be improved? How can the experience of traveling east on West Main Street into this area be improved? That's just another view of that site. And then we'll look at the east side of the BOA. So the white outline here is the Susan B. Anthony neighborhood, and then the yellow boundary is the boundary of the designated Brownfield opportunity area. So you see the site of the new visitor center at the corner of Jefferson and, I'm drawing blank. Brown, yes, thank you. So the construction of this new visitor center is going to complement the Susan B. Anthony House Museum and House, but it warrants a rethinking of the circulation around Jefferson Ave. As I mentioned, how we get tour buses in and around here, how people walk between the new visitor center and the museum and house. So there's multiple considerations considering this is in the heart of a residential area. The corner of Jefferson Ave and West Main Street is also a key gateway coming from the east, coming from downtown. So we're going to look at how that can be improved, what types of development would benefit the community. There's several underutilized and vacant properties along West Main Street that were identified as strategic sites, that blue map that I showed you in the 2020 plan. So again, just another view showing where the new visitor center site is going to be and looking at how vehicles and pedestrians, what the experience is like now. So we have made it to our interactive workshop portion. So I should have given the heads up to my colleagues that it's time to start spreading out the maps. So we're going to bring some maps over to your table. If you haven't had an opportunity yet, we would invite you to take a few minutes to go over and take a look at the inventory boards that are posted over there. If you want to get some background information about the zoning on the sites, those brownfield areas. And then we would ask that you introduce yourselves to the folks at your table if you haven't already. East side one. And then there's also an instruction sheet that has some questions that'll help guide the discussion. Some of those questions are things like, what role could these strategic sites play in the neighborhood? As I mentioned, they're both key gateways as you're coming into the area. So there's considerations there. What are some of the issues that the neighborhoods are facing? I know we already mentioned some of them. What should be protected? What's important as we think about redevelopment? What do you want to make sure is protected and preserved? And then what are some opportunities that could benefit the community, like new development, enhanced pedestrian connections, public spaces, gateway enhancements, and streetscape improvements? And then if there's anything else that you'd like to share with us, we've got pens, we've got markers. We invite you to draw on those maps, mark them up, write your ideas on them. I would just remind everyone that when we leave here tonight, if your ideas are not on the paper and we didn't hear them, then they are lost. So make sure that the ideas that you have are reflected on the sheets. We're going to have a facilitator sit at every table. So if you've got questions for us, we can help answer those. So we're going to take, according to my schedule, about 35 minutes. It could be less if we wrap up quicker, but we've got at least 35 minutes that we can spend chatting. Oh, and then I should also mention, when we're done, we're going to share what we talked about at each table. So I would ask each table to have a designated spokesperson who's going to share some of the big ideas that they heard at their table.